Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this 13th annual meeting of the European Med Society, and which is a joint meeting also with the 11th European Conference on Application of Metrology. This should be the one. No. There it is. Okay, just to set a few words for this conference. Well, quite happy that this is by the way, my name is Dominique Mambouty. I'm the President of the European Med Society, and I myself feel quite happy to be here. That's a place where I've spent quite a lot of time. It's just down the road for 12 years. So, coming back to this conference, as I said, it's both an EMS annual meeting and an ECAM conference. So clearly the EMS is a grouping of all the national med societies in Europe, and its goal is really to provide a forum for all those med societies to discuss and to address the issues for which they have been created. And this has been done for now 15 years. And I guess I must say that the initial goal really of the society was really to put together and to organize this sort of meeting which allows the whole European med community to come together and to discuss. I have to say that probably the example which we had in the US with the annual meeting of the American Med Society was definitely in our mind at that time. We are not yet quite there, but still now this conference is really growing, and we're quite happy with that. And so one of the things which we have done is to mainly connect and have already existing conferences to accepted, in fact, to move within the European Med Society conference, and that is the case for the ECAM conference, which in fact did exist before the creation of the EMS and agreed to move within the EMS annual meeting. And in fact now we have two sort of those conferences, ECAM conference and ECAC, which is for applied climatology, and 1 year is an ECAM year, I would say, and 1 year in the ECAC. So this year will be an ECAM year, so for applied metrology. There it is. So for this ECAM conference, the main theme will be high impact weather, about working in partnership to reduce risk. And in fact, hopefully you will know more following the ECAM conference, but already the strategic lectures which will be given this morning in the second part of the morning will be addressing this item. So we'll have all this illustrated later on with, you will see, I'm sure, very interesting speakers. Now, there are quite a few, apart from all the sessions, which is really the core of the whole conference, there are quite a few special events which I would like to mention here. First of all, you have an exhibition outside, and so you will be able, I would say, to meet with the exhibitors during almost the whole week until Thursday evening. That's just outside in here. There is, I would say, an interesting session, specific session this afternoon organized about careers in science, from stereotypes to novel concepts. That's a follow-up of discussion which took place in Berlin 2 years ago. And I definitely invite you to participate to that one also. And we have several sessions with, I would say, the awards which are delivered by the European Med Society, and this will take place. There will be a media session on Tuesday, and there will be also the award ceremony on Wednesday, and this award ceremony will include a specific prize which is delivered by the Ariotton Foundation, which will be offered during that ceremony. We have a round table organized on Wednesday afternoon, and that's on multi-assets, and I also will invite you to come and attend this round table. Now, the various, and really the core of the whole conference are really the scientific sessions. I will not go through the list. You have the list on the screen in here. I just want to mention specifically a special event where we have also as part and parallel to the conference organization of Seoul ERA-CLIM session. So I'm quite happy with that, something which I have somewhat contributed to the development of that, and seeing now the World Conference showing the results of ERA-CLIM, something which is really very close to my heart, to say. Now that will be this final conference, and you have here the time where you have the main sessions, and I also invite you definitely to come to that, and you will have a lot of information about how it has developed and what is going to happen in the future for reanalysis. So I would definitely want to thank you, all those who are making these conferences possible. First of all, clearly, all the sessions organizers. I know it's a lot of work before you can come to this conference once a year. You have quite a few persons working hard in the background to organize the sessions, the various committees and all the session organizers. So really thank to them all. And then also all the institutions who have helped us and contributed to this to the organization of this one. And I would definitely specifically mention the Met Office, who has really given us a very strong support for organizing this one. And of course also the, I would say, local National Med Society, the Royal Med Soc, was also hardly involved in preparing. Thank you to all those who have contributed, definitely the university in here, and thank you to all. And I'm absolutely convinced that this conference will be a very good success. Having said that, I would already give a sign that this is an annual meeting, so there will be already, we know, another one next year. This one will take place in Prague, and I just want to draw your attention to the fact that the time of that conference will be slightly different to what we do usually. Usually it's the second week in September. Next year it will be the second week in October. The reason was mainly because of the availability of the conferences facility. Now, I'm sure you will be looking forward to that. We will have for all the participants an icebreaker tonight that will be just outside here around. Again, you are all, of course, invited to participate in that one and meet all your old and new friends. And we will now go through a few addresses by all those who are really just making this conference. I will leave the list in here and would like in this case to invite the first of those speakers, John Hurst, who is the Chief Executive of the Met Office. Please, John.
I think there is going to be a competition between those of us who are on this list to see who can get this over quickest, so you can get a cup of coffee. John Hurst, Chief Executive of the Met Office. I've been Chief Executive of the Met Office for about 6 years, and it's the best job I've ever had. Great privilege. It's my job really to welcome you to the UK as the host Met Service. It's really been a great privilege to have you all here. I can see some people who haven't travelled very far, but some have travelled a long distance. I can see some current colleagues and some former colleagues, but wherever you've come from, you are very welcome. We are delighted to be able to support this conference, not just in the organisation, but I hope that every time you have a cup of coffee or a biscuit, you will think of us, because we may have. The conference theme, which you've just seen from Dominic, is something very close to my heart and our heart as an organisation. Helping to save people's lives and protect their property and livelihoods is right at the very heart of what we in the meteorology community do. And when I speak a little later, you'll see how much that pervades everything we do at the Met Office. So I'm delighted that's the theme, and I commend it to you. I have two small additions. We are providing some expert forecasting, because I know if you're staying in the accommodation, you've got at least 300 metres to walk in the morning and the evening, and you will want to know what the Reading weather is going to be like. So outside there is a forecast which will provide you guidance on whether you need to take an umbrella or not. And then also I have been instructed by my Director of Communications, Dee Cockgrove, that if I don't mention the fact that in parallel to this conference there is a conference that we have organised with the WMO for communications professionals, that we think the first of its kind, because although we only exist if we have fantastic science and impeccable operations, we only communicate, we only save people's lives and help them out if we communicate well. So adding that to this range of possibilities is really important to us. And with that, I have set the benchmark, and I'm delighted to welcome you here. Thank you for being here. I hope it's a fantastic conference.
Thank you, John, for at least making everything possible so that we can really benefit from those coffee breaks. Okay, the next one will be Jonna Hegg, who is the President of the Royal Med Society.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to just say a few words about the METSOC. We call it the METSOC nationally. I'm also delighted to welcome the European Meteorological Society to England and the Royal Meteorological Society to be part of this conference. We're very proud to have been involved in the EMS since its inception, and of course still to be part of a permanent representative on the council. Currently our General Secretary Bob Ridaway is Vice President of the EMS, so we keep our interests active in that way. Just to tell you a bit about the METSOC, it was founded in 1850, and its offices were in South Kensington in London, as were the Met Office at the time, in the Albertopolis science area. Of course, everybody's since moved from there, and the METSOC's offices are now in Reading, in central Reading, with a dedicated staff of about 10 people. We have about 3,000 members of the Royal METSOC. About half of those are on the professional academic side, and about half are on the student and amateur side. We have a wide range of activities, relying extensively on the enthusiasm and energies of our membership. But a core activity has been, for many years, our publications. Our flagship journal, of course, is the Quarterly Journal of the Royal Meteorological Society, but we've added to our portfolio with a number of other journals, and most recently we've instigated the Geophysical Data Journal, which is an online peer-reviewed journal in which you can write short articles giving information about data sets which are deposited in recognised data sources. So this is a new way of providing information on data, and we think this is a very positive move in that direction. Of course, the quality of our journals is maintained by the activities of the editors and the editorial boards. And this is where, of course, our interactions with mainland Europe are very strong. We have something like 22% of our editorial board members are from Europe outside of the UK, and about 23% of the papers that are submitted to those journals come from Europe. So we have a very strong European involvement in our publications. The publications actually provide the main income source for the Society, and one challenge that we're facing at the moment is in Britain, where the research councils are encouraging everyone to publish in open access journals. And of course, as a publisher of journals, the METSOC needs to adapt to that situation where the funding is going to come from the authors rather than from the subscribers. This is a challenge we have to face. In the longer term, it'll probably work out all fine, but it's a sort of evolution that's a bit of a difficult stage to go through. An area that we've been really active in over the last few years is education and outreach. Our education portfolio is expanding enormously under Sylvia Knight, who's our head of education. It's mainly focused on a website which is absolutely packed with resources for schools. Projects, experiments, and how to build instruments and all that sort of thing. And in terms of outreach, you may be aware that a couple of years ago we launched the Weather Club, which was aimed at amateur members and interested non-members, just to tell them more about the weather from a sort of less professional point of view. Since its inception, it has evolved to have about 1,000 members or registrants. It's now free to anyone. It has a fantastic website, which Liz Bentley has set up and keeps going. And I encourage everybody to have a look at that, even if you're not, I mean, you aren't amateurs, you're all professionals. But please have a look, because it's quite exciting provision. Another new activity that we're trying to focus on, sort of developing from what John said a little while ago, is in communication. And clearly there's a lot of good science goes on in the UK in terms of meteorology and climate. But we need to make sure that we're communicating this to the public, especially in terms of climate change science. And so the METSOC has established a new committee under Emily Shuckborough, which is looking at how better to carry out this important activity. Finally, of course, we are involved in a lot of meetings. This is one that we're very pleased to be involved in. Just before this meeting, there was the student conference attended by over 80 students. Following this is the amateur conference, which is going to be equally well attended and I hope equally exciting. Our main meetings are on Wednesday afternoons, which are the academic style meetings, but we also have Saturday meetings on more amateur subjects. So I hope anybody here that's not a member of the Meteorological Society will consider joining, and there's a stand outside by the front door. Thank you.
Next speaker will be, in fact, our host, so David Bell with the Vice Chancellor of this university.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my first and most pleasant duty to welcome you here to the University of Reading. I hope you're going to have an enjoyable and stimulating conference. You would expect me, of course, to say that this is a very fitting venue for the conference, given Reading's long-standing reputation in meteorology. We are known across the world for the quality of the work that we do in this area. And we were particularly pleased that last year, as part of Her Majesty the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, a Regius Professorship in Meteorology and Climate Science was awarded to this university. As a university, we have continued to support the expansion of our work in meteorology and climate science, most recently by and through the arrival of 25 new members of the academic staff in these areas. We're also very pleased with the close collaborations that we have with the Met Office, with ECAM, WF, and indeed, of course, the Royal Meteorological Society. You're here on our White Knights campus, 300 acres of beautiful parkland, and I do hope that in your time at Reading you'll have the chance to explore this area. Perhaps the most famous owner of the White Knights Park was the Marquis of Blandford, a great English aristocrat who lived here between 1798 and 1819. And during his time here, the park got a reputation for high living and wild extravaganzas. Clearly, they knew about the arrival one day of this conference. I hope seriously, though, that you're going to enjoy your time on the campus and have a most worthwhile and interesting conference. Once again, welcome to the University of Reading.
So next welcome will be given by Dr. Robin Hogan from the University of Reading, Department of Metrology. Robin.
Thank you very much. So dear guests and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the University of Reading on behalf of the Department of Meteorology for this 13th European Meteorological Society annual meeting, and the European Conference on Applications of Meteorology. Now, of course, this conference comes at a time of prolonged economic difficulty across Europe and associated pressures on science budgets. Yet, of course, the challenges to society that are presented by weather and climate are completely independent of the economic cycle and remain as pressing as ever. And so it's really wonderful to see a programme of talks, posters and discussions that really addresses such a wide range of these challenges in one conference and has got participation from all over Europe and beyond. And it's also great to see a range of approaches that are being taken from theory to observations to modelling. And as Sir David said, I think it's very fitting that this conference is held in Reading. Of course, there's a wide range of collaborative areas we have across weather and climate in this town. And I have to say, in considering what to tell you about Reading, I must confess that I looked at the webcast to see what was said about at EMS in Zurich a few years ago. And there, the first thing that one of the delegates were told was that about ETH was that Albert Einstein had studied there. So I was thinking, what can I say in response to that? Well, if you look in your programme, you'll see it said that, quite a nice description of the conference venue, that Reading is a gravitational centre for the meteorological world. So there's a kind of a tenuous link to Einstein there with gravitational centre. Now, by gravitational centre, I think the image that you're supposed to put in your mind is the bright star in the sky that casts light into areas that were previously in shadow, and of course which wise men and women will follow. You certainly shouldn't think of it as a black hole that attracts you early in your career and then from which you find it difficult to escape. Certainly not that. So, of course, in Reading we've got the world-renowned Department of Meteorology. We've got 240 research scientists. That's 50 academics, 20 senior researchers and fellows, 90 postdocs and 70 PhD students. And it's amazing to think that just a year ago we had 35 academics. So of those 28 points in environmental and climate science, 15 have been in the Met Department in just a year. Within the same building we've got 25 Met Office researchers with whom we work very closely. And of course meteorological training is also a central part of what we do. So as well as a thriving undergraduate programme, we welcome 50 new master's students every year, and around a third of those come from are overseas students from all around the world. And of course, Reading has the ECMWF just down the road with 260 employees, and of course hosts the Royal Meteorological Society. So while the scope of the conference is broad, I certainly would echo John Hurst's statement that the theme, high impact weather, working in partnership to reduce risk, really resonates with myself and with many of my colleagues. So just a little bit of information sort of in that vein. It was here in 2004 that Keith Browning discovered a sting jet and first identified it in the Great October Storm of 1987. This storm killed 50 people in France alone and caused £2 billion of damage and left millions of homes without power in France. Soubry and colleagues have subsequently found it to be the cause of the most damaging winds in about a third of the most intense North Atlantic storms. And so when you get this amount of damage, of course, you need to understand these storms, both for improving forecasts and, of course, for reinsurance and insurance. So there's obviously a link to industry there. Now, of course, a lot has changed in the forecasting capability since 1987. And just something I'd like to focus on is the fact that thunderstorms, which are responsible for summer flooding and hail damage across many parts of Europe, are now typically resolved rather than parameterized in many operational forecast models. And as an example, the Met Office now runs its 1.5 kilometre model routinely over the UK. The development of this model was actually led by the Met Office group based in the Department of Meteorology here. So while forecasts of high impact weather have improved in those countries using these high resolution models, of course there's lots of urgent work that remains to be done. So new observational techniques to measure the structure of thunderstorms and evaluate these models in new ways. Theoretical work to understand what controls the scale of updrafts and produces the intensity of rain. Testing models at much higher resolution, and also in the tropics where the nature of convection can be very difficult. Data assimilation challenges at the convective scale, and then understanding the hydrological properties of different catchments to understand how we can improve flood forecasts even if we had a perfect forecast of the rain. That's still a challenge as well. So at Reading we're tackling all these challenges, not just in the Department of Meteorology, but also in the departments of mathematics and statistics, and also geography and environmental science, and all of this is in very close collaboration with the Met Office. So I kind of like to argue that it's really by close collaboration between universities, national weather services and industry that we can really tackle and solve the grand scientific challenges of weather and climate and translate these into benefits for society. And I think it's this spirited partnership that's central to the theme of this conference. So finally, I'd like to reiterate my welcome to Reading and to our beautiful campus, and do wander around the lake if you've got time, and if you find the Department of Metrology, then it's just on the other side, and I have to say you'll find it a very quiet place because most people are over here, or there's another conference in Edinburgh that they'll also be at, so normally it's a bit more bustling, but if you do come across it. So in conclusion then, let me congratulate the organisers on putting together such a great programme, and I wish you a very successful, enjoyable, stimulating and memorable time in Reading. Thank you.
I think for the next speaker we need to put up a presentation, so that will be delivered by Jay Verver from the UMetNet climate program.
Yeah, I made only 3 slides, so don't worry about a long talk. My name is Jay Verver from UMetNet. I'm a program manager of the UMetNet climate program. And for those of you who don't know what UMetNet is, maybe not as well known as UMetSat or ECAM. It's a grouping of 29 European weather services collaborating and sharing data and sharing experiences in a number of a wide range of activities. And these activities are divided in 3 main programs: observations program, the forecasting program, and the climate program. Observations program is by far the biggest. And the climate program is the smallest one. And it used to be known, and it's also on the logo on the program book, it used to be ECSN, the European Climate Support Network, but that has changed so now into the climate program. The goal of the climate program is that there are many goals, as for instance the maintenance of the data sets, European-wide data sets, but there's also a part working on capacity building and sharing knowledge, and of course that is where this conference comes into sight. The ECAM and ECAC conferences we contribute to organize these, and there's also a data management workshop focusing on climate data and homogenization and things like that. And that will take place this year in November in Spain. So if you are interested, probably there's still a place to join there. Now, let me be the first one to show a picture that you will see much more often in this week. This is a picture of the precipitation of 4 days, last June, May, or May and June, 30 May to the 2nd of June. Only 4 days. This is a picture based on observations of precipitation. And you see that there was an extreme high or large amount of precipitation in Central Europe, over 100 millimeters. And I'm showing this because it nicely illustrates the relevance of the climate part of this conference and all aspects that will be touched on during this meeting. So this is based on observations, and the effect of this high precipitation amount was quite severe. There were, I think, more than 14 people died because of flooding of this caused by these amounts. And there was a lot of material damage as well. And so the obvious question was, is this a rare event, and how rare is it? It was forecasted quite well, I'm told, so that was not so much the problem, but it was just a lot of water coming down. And so what was done, we looked at these two areas that you see. One is the area of the Danube River, the catchment area, and the northern part is the Elbe River. Both were flooded. And on the pictures down, on the lower side, you see the 4 days, the maximum 4-day accumulated precipitation for every year, and the maximum of 10-day precipitation for every year. And the dots in the end indicate the amounts that were measured this year. And from this you get a perspective, a climatological perspective of these events, and you can judge whether or not this was extreme and how extreme it was. You can also see the trends. You can see perhaps the trends in the variability. Things like that is really important to judge whether this will be whether this was something special and what really happened. Of course, it's also important to know what happened before 1950. There's not much data in this time, so data rescue, for instance, is one of the topics of this conference as well, to get more data from the past. And of course, people are interested, is this going to change in the future as well? So all these aspects are part of the conference. There is another important topic, I think. If we derive this data from the observations only, there's an alternative nowadays, and that is the reanalysis, and that's ECAM is a big topic of this conference, and also regional reanalysis. On the right, you see a picture of the same days, but then made by the analysis system of the Met Office, and you see a lot more detail, and you see even parts that aren't captured by the observations. Now, the question is this really? Are we going to be able to improve on these figures here? Is it in the future better to have reanalysis, or are there some disadvantages? Well, this is one of the main topics of this conference, and I, as a HumanNet climate program manager, I welcome you all to listen to these stories. Thank you.
So clearly the European Met Society is definitely a lot of science, I would say, aim, but it's really open to the whole of symmetrical European community, and clearly one of the elements to this is also the private sector, and so Dennis Schulz will say there will be an address for the Climate Association. Dennis?
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. Dear scientists, dear users of applications of meteorology, I'm really delighted to welcome you on behalf of Climate, the Association of Private Weather Companies in Europe, to the 13th annual meeting of the EMS and the 11th ECAM. Climate is an association of a few dozen private companies. They are very different in scale. Some are very small and focus on one particular area of meteorology. Others are multinational and multi-sector companies. But all have one in common. The private weather companies are often an important interface between the academic research, national meteorological services, and the user. And the users come from many different sectors, from utilities, road services, insurance companies, but also governmental organizations and the general public and the media. Those users are all affected by the weather and the climate. And we, as meteorology, can help them with mitigating risks and creating opportunities. In the past years, the awareness of weather impacts have increased, and I think also the quality of what meteorology can do about it has increased. So it's very important to deliver the right tools to the user so that they can work with the information. It's our view that the meteorological community can deliver the best service when we work together within the community, but also with the user. And for that reason, I think this conference is a great place to be, to talk with each other, with the users of meteorology, so that we can improve the service and reduce the risk. I wish you all a very successful conference and a very good meeting here. Thank you.
As I mentioned, so clearly the private sector is one of the components of the European Met community. Another one is clearly industry, metro industry. I'd like to call Ben here.
morning. The Association of the Hydrometeorological Equipment Industry would like to extend the thanks to EMS, ECAM, the UK Met Office, the Royal Meteorological Society, the University of Reading, and the European Climate Support Network for organizing this conference and hosting the industry. As you could notice earlier, we talked about data, results, diagrams, graphs, but no data without sensors and instruments. Who are the members of the association? There are over 100 members at the moment representing the industry, and yeah, they range from the smallest humidity sensor manufacturer to satellite manufacturers, or from radiosomes to AWS manufacturers. What does this association do? It represents the industry in important consultative bodies and organizations like WMO, ITU, and ISO. Among others, HNI has the status of observer in the WMO and actively participates in expert teams and into comparisons. Here at the AMS, the industry is represented by 6 exhibitors, which are ready to welcome you from noon on when they have finished the setting up. So please do pay them a visit and make use of the availability and this opportunity to talk in person to representatives, most likely also R&D members, scientists from the industry. And they're really happy to inform you about the latest developments and would like to discuss current performance of instruments you are probably using. So really, please enjoy this conference and of course the hospitality of Reading. Have a pleasant conference. Thank you.
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, when we set up the European Met Society, we really had in mind what had been organized for a long time in the US with the American Met Society. And since then we have had quite a close relationship with the EMS, and I'm quite happy to welcome Mark Shepard, who is the president of the EMS. Please, Mark.
Thank you. Really not a welcome. I feel like I'm being welcomed, but on behalf of the nearly 14,000 members of the American Meteorological Society, I want to wish Dominique and members of the EMS a successful conference. I also want to acknowledge we have several of our leadership from the AMS that will be in attendance. Jay Trobeck, our Professional Affairs Commissioner, who is a regular attendee of this meeting, will be here. Professor Peter Lamb from the University of Oklahoma. I don't know if Peter's here somewhere right now, but he's an AMS counselor and also on our executive committee. So we bring you greetings. Certainly when we think about high impact weather, the United States has it all, take your pick. As we've seen with Superstorm Sandy in the last 2 years, the devastating tornadoes in Oklahoma, drought that has been gripping parts of the Midwest, the U.S. Congress, the President of the United States, and many stakeholders and practitioners are taking notice. There are bills in Congress right now dealing with improving weather forecast and modeling capability in our country. We're worried about a looming weather for satellite gap in our country as well. So weather and extreme weather is front and center in the United States right now. And I would call your attention to something that just came out in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society on September 5th, last Thursday. There's a report from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration that's looking at how extreme weather events in 2012 may or may not be linked to climate change. And so I would invite you to take a look at that report. It's available on the AMS website and also available via National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So one other thing that I would mention in closing, the AMS, we are involved as the Royal Met Society in publishing journals, hosting conferences. We have various activities in policy and education, an array of other activities. And we're also will be celebrating in just over 5 years our 100th anniversary of the American Meteorological Society. And so over that time, we've grown quite an enterprise, and we really encourage and are developing partnerships. We've actually developed a very strong program to encourage developing nations to engage more in the American Meteorological Society activities. So if you are collaborating with colleagues in developing nations of the world, we have special membership rates, special membership and meeting rates for those members as well. So that's something I'd like to share. We are in the process of spinning up an international committee to even strengthen some of the partnerships we have with some of our international colleagues as well. And I look forward to meetings at the end of this week here in Reading for the International Forum on Meteorological Societies. Thank you very much for having us, and I look forward to meeting some of you and partaking in the